He's the kind, compassionate guy. I'm the tough builder who says I got to bring it in on time.
Arnold's the obscured base man behind. Works out great.
Correct. It's sort of like the Wizard of Oz.
It's 4:00. It's 4 o'clock. And I think that's a great way to start with Arnold Karp saying, I'm the mean builder who says, I got to bring it in on time. So I guess that's as good a way as any to introduce my two guests. Arnold Karp, the builder who has to bring it in on time, who's just finished a 12-unit mixed-use retail and apartments development called The Crossing downtown, and I'll try and share that. And now is working on The View. So let's see, can you see the screen? So The Crossing is there. Can you see it? Can you all see it?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's the mixed use development that Arnold did, 12 units in the heart of New Canaan's downtown. And you did that in, I think, 2-3 years ago. And you'll correct me if I'm wrong. And now you're working on your most ambitious project ever called The View. And it's now fully leased, the 2 gray buildings in the rear, and the 2 buildings in front are now finished and available to be bought.
Correct.
How am I doing?
You're doing fine.
Okay. My other guest, Stephen Kliegerman, has been working with developers like Arnold for the past 20 years at least with Terra Holdings and Brown Harris Stevens, although I think you were born doing this, right, Stephen?
I've been doing this for about 30 years now.
All right, 30 years. And correct me if I'm wrong, because that's why I said I'm going to do the intro, but you got to tell me if I'm wrong. But you are able to, I guess, consult with these developers at the very earliest stage. When somebody like Arnold says, I found a piece of dirt, 3 acres, and I'm thinking that I can buy that dirt for $10 million, improve it for another 60, and sell it for 100. You get involved in both the economics and the design decisions and every aspect of that until they're all gone. Is that right?
That's correct. We work with developers, hopefully from pre-acquisition all the way through pre-development planning and marketing, and then sales or leasing. Hopefully a developer will contact us before they acquire the property so that we could help do a feasibility study on the economics of the project with them, to advise on unit mix, unit size, potential pricing, amenities. Then we build a marketing and sales or leasing campaign around that. So in a perfect world, we get called before the deal is closed, but often we get called after the land is acquired, but still all the pre-development work needs to be done. And then, yes, we work with the architects, the designers to envision the product and develop the product and then sell the product.
Steve, how much out of New York are you advising on?
It kind of ebbs and flows with different marketplaces. We've advised on a couple of projects in Connecticut, a couple on the Gold Coast of New Jersey. Actually, even worked on one in Philadelphia years ago. It seems like we're being more sought after now as the economics of projects and the demographic of buyers is changing, because a lot more, recently, obviously, a lot more Manhattan buyers were escaping to the burbs. So the suburban developers wanted to know what that Manhattan buyers' needs were, because they may not have been as accustomed to them as they were to their local buyers. But it's still, 90% of our business is still New York City based, although we'd really love to see it expand more to the suburbs as time goes on. We've had some great success in Connecticut of turning around some struggling projects. So hopefully with that, we'll be able to bring more on in the future. We're always looking for new opportunities.
Am I seeing a little bit of a 5 o'clock shadow on you? Is that an indication of how we're doing in the marketplace?
It's more about an 8 o'clock shadow at this point. Yeah, it's been a long day, and I'm actually taking my first day off tomorrow since March 10th. So chose not to shave. I'm going to take my kids skiing tonight, going up to Mount Snow for 2 days. So decided to leave a little scruff.
Good for you. So can we talk macro? What's going on? I mean, the market, as far as I know, new development wise, the anecdotes that I hear is down 20 to 30% in some cases, and that it's coming back. Many deals were falling through for a while, but it seems to be strengthening.
Yeah, I get this call probably once a day minimum of, asking what the market is down. And the truth of the matter is that every project is different. And Arnold will tell you the same, right? Every market is different. Every project is different. Every capital stack within that project is different. Everyone's in a different phase of their sales process. So pricing in general, I would say in Manhattan is really down anywhere between 7 and 12% on average. When you get over the $20 million mark is where you're seeing those big discounts on those penthouses. But as I said in a previous call today to our BHS brokers in Manhattan, those are usually properties that were never really worth what they were asking to begin with. So for instance, a lot of you have seen articles about the $50 million penthouse that sold for $22 million, right? It was never worth 50. It was never worth 40. It was never worth 35. It was probably worth somewhere between 25 and 30, and it sold for 22. So in my opinion, it really found its market, right? And I think what COVID has done, it has kind of unmasked the overpricing in certain areas of the marketplace and has brought that area of the market, that segment of the market back down to reality. Brooklyn, we're only seeing like a 4 to 8% negotiability factor overall. Again, there are things that will be more negotiable, but overall, we're actually seeing relative strength in the housing market right now. The first 6 or 5 weeks of the year have started off incredibly strong. We're doing deals at every one of our buildings. We are negotiating, and for the first time, what we're seeing is actually a little bit of price negotiation, not just all concessions. We're actually seeing a little bit of price negotiation on top of concessions, which is something different than we saw a year or 18 months ago.
So let me ask you something. It's always the
You're not
developer.
seeing price concessions on Arnold's buildings. That's just a
He's
New York
probably
City
raising
kind of thing.
prices right now.
Exactly,
Yeah.
Stephen. As you know, the truth of the matter is we set our prices a year basically plus ago. You want to move the units. You want to be fair to the buyer. You want to be fair to us as the seller. And it's what it takes to put a deal together. What people come and say is, well, geez, why have you reduced, hold on, I just lost you guys, but you're back. There we go. If you price fairly going in, we didn't raise our prices to go negotiate 20% or 10%. We marked them to market when we were doing this. So, when I hear concessions and the rest of that, just as you mentioned about the penthouse that was 50 million, it probably wasn't 50. We run into buyers all the time now who keep on telling us that, look, I bought the $4 million house for 2. And I try to explain to them, no, you bought the $4 million house for 2, but it was really worth 2. Buyers are very sophisticated with all the tools in the market, with a bunch of very good realtors out there. Very rarely do you hear somebody who overpays. Yes, if you're a rock star, musician, family wealth, and it doesn't really matter, those are the clients who walk in and say, oh, it's $40 million, I'll pay for it. But in the rest of the world, those buyers are very few and far between.
I want to know how both of you talk about pricing on multi-unit development. A lot of the realtors here, will price a house, and we price them one at a time. It occurs to me that when we price a unit in your building, if we price 4C, it has an implication on what 5C, 6C, and 7C are gonna sell for. So there's a different process in pricing the building initially, and a different process for changing that price depending on how the market's responding. Can you guys talk about how you price a year or two in advance and how you're able to hold the price?
Stephen, you want to tackle that, and then we'll.
Yeah, sure. So, it's a little bit of science, a little bit of art. And as Arnold will tell you, as a developer, you have to be optimistic, right? Because, even the best developers are still buying land at a value that is usually a forward value, right? You're buying it today to develop it tomorrow. The landowner never wants to leave money on the table because, if I sell it to you for this, and then 2 years from now, I could have sold it to you for that, I'm going to curse myself. They never look at the fact that the market goes down. They only think the market always goes up, right, Arnold?
Of course.
So when we price, we take a look at a number of factors. We take a look at what's the competition going to be like in a year, 2 years, whenever that project is supposed to be delivered to market. What's in the pipeline that might be competing with that product? Where are the holes in the marketplace? What's not being delivered to the market now that I can fill a need and thus price to a premium to today to project out for a couple of years from now? Then you start to take a look at the differences in the building as the building, if it's a high rise, how do the views change as the building goes up the stack? And with those views changing, is your unit mix going to change? Okay, who's my target buyer? And is there a target market that isn't being served right now? Right. So for instance, I think in a lot of your Connecticut markets, you have a lot of empty nesters who want to stay in your neighborhoods, but they don't have anywhere to upgrade to. Upgrade might be going from a 4,000 square foot house to a 2,000 square foot condo, but it's an upgrade because it's a different kind of living, right? So if you have that aging neighborhood where you believe that the empty nesters are going to want to get rid of the house, get rid of the stairs, not have to deal with the maintenance and the shoveling. We just had, an unprecedented snowstorm, right? A lot of people, after having to deal with all that snow, decide to move. So you have to take a look at who that target demographic is and what they can afford and what they're selling their existing homes for. You have to think of the foreign marketplace if you're talking about Manhattan, and what would that buyer want? And we always look for the holes in the market. So when everyone else is building big apartments, my clients are building smaller apartments. When everyone starts to build smaller apartments, I'm going to get my clients to start building larger apartments to differentiate ourselves.
But once you sell that first unit for $1 million in the unit, it's going to dictate to some degree everything else around it.
It does. And that's why sometimes that first sale takes time, because the developer is going to be very smart about not undercutting themselves and holding onto their value. And that's why in what I'll try to phrase as a normal marketplace, not impacted by abnormalities like COVID, okay? You want to price slightly aggressively in order to set the bar, okay? And then you tier up from there. So some companies use a percentage increase per floor. Some just do 1 bedrooms go up 20,000 a floor, 2 bedrooms go up 25,000 a floor. And then if there's a view break, you might have a bigger jump. Then you have to take a look at the amenities that the building might be offering as well. And of course, the location. Does the building offer parking? Does it not offer parking? But really, John, it's important for each line of the building to set its base that you can build upon.
So John, to give you a great example, so sitting to my left is actually Robin Carroll, who is part of our team. And I just saw Paul Stone get on. If you saw Paul's spreadsheet for pricing, so, we studied our competition. We went and saw what everybody else was doing. Paul's spreadsheet literally takes up several pages of an Excel spreadsheet. And then we actually sat in the office with other bright people and said, what are the changes? What does this unit offer that the other doesn't? one looks into the courtyard, one looks over the trees on Park Street. So again, it's as much science and art, and sometimes people get it correct and sometimes people don't. What we were looking for is not what was coming, but what we thought was fair to get people who are sophisticated. In most cases, they've owned a house. So in our case, our first sale was to somebody who has looked at all the competition and came in, walked through the project. We showed him a few different units. We didn't think he was a serious buyer. And sort of at the end of his tour of 4 or 5 units, he said, all right, I like number 2, I'll buy it. I said, well.
He bought your best unit and set the ceiling so you could never get more than that.
Sort of correct. On the other hand, he knew the value. Again, he appreciated that we had done our floors with gypcrete, that we had done soundproofing. He was an educated consumer, so he was an easier sale. The ones that are more difficult are people who haven't been in the market, don't realize that there's not a lot of inventory. There is some competition, certainly. But once they look around, we hope that we sort of are best in show. Okay, and that's where some of the art comes in. So we've built a complex that has 16 grilling stations and outside decks. Look, the most important thing to me is all those people who drove their car into the heated garage last week when it was snowing, next week when it's going to be cold. We just had a banner that we're going to hang off the building that said, if you lived here, you wouldn't be shoveling.
Exactly.
So it's finding not only the pricing, but to make sure that the amenities and the whole package fits in for what people are looking for. And when you miss it, there are lots of developers who develop and they do very well. And then there's one project that puts them out of contention. So I would agree with Steve that it's art, science, getting, Paul brought in probably 100 sheets of paper that we combined down to, one sheet that in the condo section had 40 units, and then we sort of arm wrestled from there. Well, this one has a view, this one gets the morning sun. This has a, view of the 4 steeples in New Canaan. So.
But also we have a huge variety in floor plans, which I think is kind of unique in a multifamily. So, of our 100 units in our total complex, we have like 38 unit types. So it's not like, it's very hard for people to compare that if you sold unit 101 for this price, that unit 506 is worth the same amount because it's so completely different.
And Robin, with her design eye, so of the 40 condo units, there are sort of 3 main themes. So you could look at the one on the 2nd floor and not like that kitchen, but the one on the 3rd floor has a kitchen you love and you really like the tiles in the bathroom. You never know what drives people. We have one unit that has more closet space than the house I currently live in. And, while everybody says, oh, geez, oh my goodness, there are 5 closets for the master bedroom. That seems to have a lot of draw for people.
So I have a question that is for both of you. When you planned this in New Canaan, the difficulty in pricing it was there was nothing else like it around. And you said my target customer is probably somebody moving across town. We have a captive market of 20,000 people who live here, and I think I can sell 100 units to the base of 7,000 households, some of which want a condominium. And what I want to know is, were your predictions correct? And then I want to ask Steve Kliegerman, when you build a place in Queens, I don't think you know where your customers are coming from, do you? If you build 100 units skyscraper in Queens, they could be coming from Brooklyn, Manhattan, or London. So go ahead, Arnold. How close am I to getting it right that you draw almost exclusively from New Canaan?
Well, that was the thought. And on the rentals, again, we have 59 rentals. So our demographic runs from 27 to basically 87. We've had a combination of people who have sold their houses and want to stay in town. And that has really ranged from, 48 to 80. And we have a lot of people who, are married, about to have a child, or have somebody who's young in tow as an infant and want to be closer to family. And in our case, they don't want to be in a fraternity party downtown Stamford. They want a little bit of a more mature, quieter existence. So I think we have sort of hit that demographic on the rental side. My biggest concern is, come April 15th, when we have nothing available and somebody knocks on our door and says, well, I've just sold my house. And I say, I'm sorry, we're completely leased. A good problem to have, but I do feel badly. I would have built more rentals had I been known.
But our first two sales are not people from New Canaan. So they're both, the one of the sales are people who are selling their home in Wilton. And the other sale is a woman who actually lives in New Jersey, but has kids and grandkids that live in New Canaan.
Not Manhattanites.
No, not yet.
yet.
Roberto, most of our clientele, I will say, has been lower Westchester and Fairfield County. Because when you sell your house, and it doesn't matter, and you start to look for places, there's not a whole lot of variation in the market. So as Stephen mentioned, we looked at the market and we created what we think is a luxury project, heated parking, concierge, things that people in Fairfield County don't have in many buildings. And in our case,
sure.
we tied into and you're in New Canaan. If we had built the same building in Stamford, it would be much taller, much denser. We're 500 feet away from the train station, which used to be our number one sales thing. That has now fallen to number 48 on our amenities list, because less people are taking the train. On the other hand, the people who seem interested are those who are looking for easy living. Everything from shoveling the snow to they actually really like that you walk to a room, you open the trash, you throw it down the chute, and somebody else deals with it. So you never know what people are going to check off.
New York living.
Outdoor spaces that we've offered seem to be a big issue. But John, when we looked, a lot of the renters have a strong tie to New Canaan. A lot of the buyers are people in a geographic region that are probably within 30 minutes of New Canaan. So, Westchester and the like, because quite honestly, there's no product like we're currently selling available.
Some of the rentals we've drawn from Bedford, Westport, and Darien as well. So,
Paul, speak up. We can't hear you.
Can you hear?
Louder.
Sorry, I've turned up the volume. The rentals have drawn from Darien, Bedford, and even Westport. A few from Manhattan, but it is from a wide circle. And like Arnold said, that there isn't really a product like this. And the new products that you see in Westport that have gone up or are going up, they're a lot closer to Route 1. So it's just not the same. They're not as big, and you're on Boston Post Road is.
Right.
So,
We had an advantage when we went and built. It cost us a lot of money, but we're 50% open space. So, when you look at projects, that seems to be one of the things people are checking off. For some of these people, they have not lived in a multi-unit building for 40 years. The last time was a few years after college. So, that brings in all sorts of other things.
Are any of your purchasers investors?
No, not in our project.
no.
So Steve, that's something that I wanted to ask you about, because the rental market, as Ari Harkov would say, is a dumpster fire in New York. You can't, I have a bunch of investors looking for things, and unless they're putting literally 75% down, they're not breaking even. So in that case, are you seeing any investor deals?
We are. We're seeing some investors. mainly foreign investors. I think it's still some flight capital, frankly. They're starting to come back. They actually started to come back to the market in January. But for the most part, we're seeing users. Right now with the way the rental market is, as you said, it's pretty hard to convince someone that they're going to be able to easily rent their apartment. But there's still are some out there. If you can find a property with a tax abatement, those still actually might make sense. But for the most part, they're users right now.
It's very hard to make the numbers work. And, in our case, you have to live in it. So that for 2 years, just to avoid somebody who's going to buy it and then rent it. It really doesn't compete with our rental product because our rental units are different configurations. But what we want are people who are going to own and treat it like they own it, so that, everybody we've sold to has asked what the demographic of the renters are. So these are sophisticated people who don't want, somebody to buy it and put their, right after college son in it. These tend to be people who are, have lived through that problem and want basic housing that's going to work for them.
So the investors they're looking for capital appreciation over a long period of time. That's the only way that they're entering the market, right?
Right.
Okay. So we go back to pricing for a second? Steve, I just wanted to ask you, our market has been, especially the new development market, has suffered quite a bit. How come, and I understand, how come there hasn't been more price transparency from the developers? Like they're selling things for 25% off, 20% off. How come and I understand that with their investors, the people that are giving them the money, that there are, minimum release prices and things like that they must sell. They have to sell beyond that in order to sell. But why don't they get closer to that mark? Because if there was more transparency, I sincerely believe that more buyers would jump in. There's just this kind of card game that they hold their cards far too close. That doesn't allow them to know that the buyers don't feel that there's velocity in the marketplace.
Well, I would agree with you that transparency in the marketplace is something that we need in New York desperately. I have argued vigorously with my colleagues at other firms about their lack of transparency. I think they actually are harming the market, depressing the market, and creating so much ambiguity in the marketplace that no one knows what to do.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I have two competitors, particularly one, who simply are adamant that their way is better. And by the way, I'm watching their clients go down the toilet.
Wow.
I'm watching their clients lose billions of dollars in equity and have failing projects. Yet
there's a question in the chat room for you, Steve, related to that, can we sense, when a sponsor is offering 4% commission, paying carrying costs?
Not really.
No?
Because commission that's an absorption game, and it's a respect for the brokerage community game, right? So, what happens is one blinks, right? And then others blink. So once a couple start offering a higher commission, I don't want to talk about numbers because I don't want to ever be accused of price fixing. But once one blinks, then others blink. So then all of a sudden what used to be an incentive becomes the norm. But all because of developers offering a higher commission doesn't necessarily mean that there's blood in the water. It just simply means that they want to increase their exposure to the brokerage community and have them come over here instead of go over there. Okay. Same thing with concessions. They might advertise those concessions, but then they don't negotiate past that. I've had, Related and Extel are famous for advertising concessions, but then they don't really move much past those concessions. So all they're doing, to Roberto's point, is being a little bit more transparent, but they're not being fully transparent because they still don't list their contract signs when they get signed, right? We don't know what percent sold most of their projects are, and they hide everything. And that, in my opinion, is a serious flaw in our marketplace. And I'm not going to out my two competitors that continue to perpetuate this. But I will tell you that back in September, when the market felt like it was starting to wake up a little bit,
yeah,
I had a phone call with all the heads of the new development firms in the city. All of them except one agreed to get together on a joint PR campaign to unveil what really is going on in the marketplace and give transparency. And my one competitor, that's a larger competitor and controls a large part of the market, shot it down.
Wow.
And said, I'll never do that. And this competitor is losing their clients billions of dollars.
Wow.
And yet still control the market, which just makes no sense to me at all.
Did you see the price reductions at 1010 Park?
Yeah.
They were like 30%, and just slashed them right off. Now, did they have to do that because the Benson's moving property, and they're the next best thing?
Yeah.
Because those properties have been sitting there for 4 years.
Yeah. They were overpriced 4 years ago. They were overpriced 3 years ago, and they're overpriced now. The Benson's a better product, frankly, and has a lot more absorption than 1010 had, in their first couple of weeks. So projects like that, absolutely, they have to adjust their prices back to a market rate. And that building also has very high carrying costs just because of the limited number of units, right? So you got high prices on top of high carrying costs, and you just can't make it work.
What about 1228 Madison? Talk about high carrying costs.
Well, that's a land lease.
Right, but
Yeah.
that's
a land lease, so they're going to have high carrying costs.
I want to go back to big picture. How many years, small question, Arnold, how many years between the first moment you conceived of the view till now? How many years in the making?
5.5, almost going on 6. So,
All right, so
what I say, John, is it took me 2 years and $2 million to get that approved, which is mind-boggling for a project. Look, Scott's nodding his head. Scott
But
was
it's
nice enough.
typical in Fairfield County. So when we asked you a year ago, would you do this again? You said, I would do 3 of these again. Really? You would take a multi-million-dollar bet and 3 years of your life to do it again and again?
Yeah, that's because I'm a foolish real estate entrepreneur. Steve works with those guys all day long. In certain cases, look, we built a lot of spec houses. The market didn't follow us. The market went the other way.
Unique 5 years. I think Corbin has spent 5 years getting Darien off the ground. They've been talking about the transit area, South Norwalk train station, for at least 10 years. And it looks like they're starting to dig holes over there. But these projects in Fairfield, at least in Fairfield County, take a lot of red tape before, I think, 5 years, pretty reasonable in New Canaan.
But that's part of what goes into the cost. When people say, well, you're selling condominiums starting at, $1 million. Yes, there's a lot of time value of money. On the other hand, I truly believe that planning and zoning in Fairfield County are going to have to change their evil ways. And I don't necessarily mean that they're evil, but things are going to have to be done in a more timely basis, because all of a sudden the state and everybody is talking about affordable housing and different types of housing. Being in front of these commissions for 9 or 10 months probably
Is
isn't
it any
going to work in
different,
the future.
Stephen, in New York? Come on. I can't imagine all the evil P&Z boards are out here in Connecticut.
No, but it's
No,
a
I
newer
mean,
product. In the small towns, it's a newer thing, and it's harder for people
Right.
to get their heads around it, and it moves more slowly. This is brand new, so there's a lot of resistance. But I think what's happened over time is they've come to realize those people that would be resisting are starting to see the actual demonstrated need in these towns, and very often from their friends and family members who need senior friendly housing or whatnot, because it's not available in most of these towns. So they just go elsewhere. So there's a
Right.
slow chipping away of the resistance. And I think we're going to see more of that. Not that it's going to be easy street, but it's going to be less difficult than it has been in the past. That's my prediction.
Yeah, I agree with Paul. Also, in smaller towns, or even a city like New Rochelle that I live in, everyone's worried about overcrowding the schools. So, the unit mix, I know, like for rentals here in New Rochelle, they don't want the developers to build any 3 bedrooms. Not that you usually build a lot of 3-bedroom rentals anyway, but there's actually a penalty for building a 3-bedroom because they're scared that too many kids are going to overflow the schools. So I know that happens a lot. You know, and I agree with Paul. A lot of these building departments, they're not used to these size and scale of developments. They don't even know how to deal with them in some instances. Manhattan, you've got similarities. You've got a big bureaucracy. You've got changing building code constantly. The fire department gets involved and they change rules that change building codes. Stairwells have changed. Fire suppression codes have changed. All kinds of things change. And sometimes they change right before you're about to file your DD set. And now you have to go back and you have to re-engineer the building and start all over, not start all over again, but retool it. That costs the developer time, it costs the developer money. That's going to impact the project itself too. You know, and then obviously, you know, for those of you who are active in Manhattan, there's the not in my backyard factor, right? We built 200 Amsterdam with our client. No one likes the fact that the building's tall, but did the people who live in the tall buildings around it care when they were the tallest building in the neighborhood?
Right.
No, they didn't
Exactly.
care. But now you're going to block my view, so I'm going
Right.
to get all up and haughty-taughty, right? So there's that factor as well. The amount of money my client has had to spend defending lawsuits at 200 Amsterdam is obscene. You could have built an entire building for their legal bills.
You have it good, Arnold. Only 5 years of your life.
Well, that's for this project. If there's another one, if Robin and Paul don't talk me out of it, the truth of the matter is, if you don't offer new product, you lose your client base. So let's talk, when you introduced us, let's use the Crossing. So that's a smaller building. Our office is actually located on the first floor with a physical therapist, but we have 12 units upstairs. And when we went to build this, the first year we rented all 12 out, and hold on. We rented all 12 out, and within the first year, hold on, I'm trying to bring you guys back up. There we go. Within the first year, we had 6 of those people move out at the end of their lease term. What did those 6 people do? 5 bought in New Canaan, 1 bought in Darien. This was their intro or their gateway to Fairfield County and New Canaan. So you have to have different types of housing for people to get into the town, see if they like it. Look, from a financial standpoint, it would have made more sense for me not to build 59 rentals at the View, but to build it all as condominiums. We didn't do that because my view was that with very limited rental supply in New Canaan, we would be able to fill a need. Well, that need we were correct on that. We opened December 1st. We're 86% leased up, I believe, as of today. So, you know, people clearly need a nice rental product in combination with those who still want to buy. And that's why sort of our for sale units range in size and taste and amenities and floor. You know, you got to give some variety. But if the towns out here want to stay current, they'll have to be a little bit more flexible.
The market cycle with the pandemic definitely fell into your lap, though.
Yes. The funny thing is we have less pandemic renters than I would have thought.
Really?
Yes.
There was a long waiting list. There was a very long waiting list prior to the pandemic too. So there was a demonstrated need, but you know, it certainly pushed some people off the fence, I would think.
But I don't think we have more than 5 or 6 who are New York City transfers who came because of the pandemic. Most of the people who came have some sort of real tie to New Canaan. Parents grew up here. Their wife was from Darien. They were looking for a rental. So usually it's somebody who's Fairfield County based.
But I mean, a lot of the people that are renting actually sold their homes that weren't able to sell their homes probably for the last 3 years or so in New Canaan. So, I mean, I think the influx of people buying homes definitely helped those people move to the next level who've been ready probably for a couple of years now.
Give me an idea of pricing on a 2-bedroom, 2-bath rental and a condo there is what?
So a 2-bedroom rental would go anywhere between like about 4,900 up to 8,000. And the condos, a 2-bedroom is around somewhere between 1.4 to
1.5.
1.7.
Yeah.
And how many square feet are those?
So that the bigger, a 2-bedroom might be somewhere between a rental 1,200 up to like 1,500. And the condos go a little bigger. I think, we have like 2 bedrooms with dens and stuff like that are more up to like 1,700.
Yeah,
We have
But then we have big units
Yeah, we
too.
built several 2,800 square foot units, and we've had 1 or 2 people walk through and tell me they're not big enough. Downsizing in Fairfield County is an interesting term. What everybody'd like to do is take their 8,000 square foot house, put it on one level, downtown, walking distance with heated garage. We had somebody at the open house last Sunday who commented to me, they like it, but where are they going to put all of their furniture? I said, well, you have a wonderful opportunity to leave some of your furniture behind. Oh, I can't. So how do you downsize from your 6,000 or 7,000 square foot or 5,000 to, just under 3? It's a challenge for some people. Other people find it very relieving. So
we have a question. Would you like to build in Bedford Hills, New York? I have 52 acres for sale. So for I've seen this before. People say, I have 10 acres. I have 50 acres. Why doesn't a builder come here and buy my land and, make their $100 million? I mean, what is it that Stephen or Arnold, what are you looking for in a piece of property and how do you value it?
I think Arnold should talk about how he looks for the property and values it. I'll talk about how we then consult with Arnold to help him justify the value.
right, and that is a good point, because our bankers always want us to justify everything that we're doing. But the quick answer to that is, is it 50 acres of developable? Is it 50 acres that the infrastructure costs make it too expensive? We look at property all the time. We recently acquired 74 acres in Monroe for industrial. We just bought another 14 acres on Route 25 that we're hoping that to put a shopping center in. I'm always looking for land for houses, but the key is you can't overpay, because you can never take a bad deal going in and make money at the end. There are just too many variables. You've come up with a design, as Stephen says, you think you're on your way to approval, and then somebody says, oh, it's too tall, it's too gray, we want that unit to step back 8 feet. The costs of the regulatory process is something you can never figure out. For years, I used to take whatever I thought it was and double it. Now I take whatever I think it's going to be and triple it, because there's always just one more hurdle that nobody actually expected. The greatest one in New Canaan, John, is when I penciled this out 5 years ago, I didn't realize that the sewer tax would ever change in New Canaan. Well, that was a substantial change, but I've still got to make my numbers work. If you're a developer right now, so that people understand, the cost of lumber in the last 9 months has doubled. So something that used to cost me $8 now costs me $16. And since most of our development, at least in Fairfield and Westchester County, is lumber based, there is no way to ever pencil in a 50% increase. I kid that the window manufacturers, they don't care if we're selling or we're not selling, they're going to raise their windows by 3 to 5% every year. The appliance manufacturers. So again, behind the building end, in my case, it's Paul on numbers and Robin on design, trying to take what we think is a concept and patching it all together. But finding the raw product, Stephen was correct. The sellers always want to sell it with future value, and I need to buy it on today's value.
And it's where the 52 acres are too, right? If it's way outside of town, that's going to attract a different kind of developer versus something closer to town, right? So, you know, Bedford, that's a pretty big acreage. So that might be more attractive to somebody looking to do a CCRC, but even those, they want to be closer to town as well. But, you know, you need more land for full, you know, for full services and that kind of model.
What's a
So, John, I'm
CRC?
trying to-
City folk here. What does that mean?
So yeah, CCRC is continuing care retirement community. So it has independent living component along with assisted living with memory care, and then it's a much bigger project than just an assisted living. But for a multifamily, like something like the View, I mean, the chances are, it depends upon where this 52 acres are, but I'd be willing to bet that it's not super close to town. And so that would attract a different kind of buyer. That would be my guess.
Stephen?
But John, I'm trying to sell a piece currently, and I have an interested buyer who said, yes, but what can I build there? Okay, I'd like to buy it today, but what, and my answer is, it's not approved yet. This is what we think. Well, I'll be back when you get it approved. The approval process, I probably spend, and Paul, with my attorneys, we spend at least 2 nights of almost every week in front of some town board or commission. It's become easier because it's on Zoom, but much harder because they can't see me throw a fit or, you know, watch Paul put his hand on my shoulder of not to jump up when they tell me that we'll pollute or we'll do. I mean, some of the barriers to entry is people's being naive. Something is going to get built there. So when somebody says, well, we're just going to oppose it, you know, that doesn't work in today's day and age. Tell us what, you know, might make this more palatable to you. But, you know, you can't buy 4, 10, and $20 million pieces of property and not develop them. You know, the answer always is, well, why don't you donate that to the town? Well, I'd like to donate it. Does the town have what I bought it for? And in Monroe, you know, I bought it for 2. We have another $1.5 million into it. Be happy to sell it to the town for over 4. They didn't have 2 to buy it initially. So, you know, as you start to look at these projects, it's also what can be built, and then it's absorption. You know, you can't buy today on today's absorption rates, because while I have a group of very knowledgeable people on the Zoom call, can somebody tell me how long this market will last? Because everybody says, oh, you should go build a series of spec houses. You know, been there, done that, and sat on the last ones for 3 to 5 years.
So Stephen, they're asking you every day, how long is this going to last? All your clients are paying you big bucks for your advice. What's the advice?
Well, I guess the question is what last what? Because right now we're really busy again, right? So if the question is how long are all these buyers going to be out there? I think there's a lot of pent up demand. My philosophy, no offense to all of us Americans, but my philosophy about the American consumer is you only hold them back so long. We are a consumer-based economy and culture. I find that after about 6 months, money starts burning a hole in everyone's pocket and they feel like they have to spend it. So whenever I see a cycle of 6 months go by with slow sales, I always know sales are coming ahead of me. I think we've got 6 months ahead of us of reasonably robust sales. I think the fall actually is where we're going to see the market pull back again, because I think what we're going to see is the real economic impact of COVID start to hit. I'm talking about New York City.
Wait. Fall 2021, a pullback?
Yeah. Yeah.
Everywhere?
That's
New York
consistent.
City.
New York.
I think that's
New York City.
consistent with just,
I actually think the next 6 months as a broker is where you're going to make your money.
I agree. I think that they're just also the behavioral, that people are all going to be coming back to get in place for fall, for school. And then it's just like the flight out of town. It happened. If you left, you left. And now it's kind of stopped.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be the same type of thing.
I also think that the urban blight that has occurred because of COVID is going to be felt for the next 18 months. So I think New York City, unfortunately, is going to suffer from that much more than the suburbs, because I think there's been a lot of flight to the suburbs. And then I think we're going to have a nice recovery. But I think the next 6 months as brokers and sellers are actually an opportunity. The summer is always a wild card. And then I think the fall actually is not going to be as good as the spring, which, by the way, the fall market's never as good as the spring, right? Because the fall market's about this big.
Yeah, sure.
It was in Connecticut.
No, I'm talking New York City. I'm not a suburban broker. I'm an urban broker. Okay. I know that I can consult with developers and I can sell there, but the majority of my experience is still in an urban environment. Okay.
Wait, I want to argue. We got low interest rates. I'm told that the deal flow is in New York City is back to pre-pandemic levels. I've been told that builders that demand has been increasing for quite a long time and supply has been diminishing nationwide. So I know the suburbs will do fine, but a lot of people have come on this show very bullish about New York's prospects and don't see a downturn this year.
So let me tell you my opinion, okay? And I'm certainly not the smartest guy in the world, but I've been doing this a long time, and my penny bets and pinky bets have been pretty darn good. In the second half of the year, you're going to see a lot of forbearances come to bear, a lot of developers in a lot of trouble. HFZ is only the tip of the iceberg. He's the first guy to go down. There's going to be others. And when those forbearances hit and the banks really start to decide that they don't have any choice, the lenders, the banks, the mezz, all start to scoop things back up, their basis is a lot lower than the developer's basis. But it takes time in New York. It takes a long time in New York. So that's why I think now you've got this pent up demand, you've got some good deal flow, and you've got some wind behind you. And once those buyers have swept through and bought, there's still going to be thousands of units on the market that were poorly conceived. One of the reasons why Arnold is as successful as he is because he builds to the marketplaces that he knows. He does his research really well, and it doesn't seem like he bites off too much, more than he can chew. Maybe a little bit, but not too much, okay? There are developers that have developed buildings in our city that are almost unsellable. Certainly unsellable at their basis.
So they have to go under and get foreclosed on by a bank before,
Unfortunately.
even though we have high demand and we have a shortage of housing, you're saying those projects have to fail, and they're going to start to fail in the fourth quarter.
In the third and fourth. And unfortunately, that lingering inventory, we've got projects that are literally been on the market for 5 years that are dragging down the market because they should have never been built. So that inventory sits there. And a lot of it's the very high priced inventory that the papers love to talk about and love to write about. Okay. You know, how many billionaires are there in the world?
Well,
Not enough.
We built more apartments for billionaires than there are billionaires in the world.
Steve, there is a phrase that says to determine the success of a project, you have to follow the debt.
Yeah.
How do, like, as a broker looking at certain projects and you're concerned, I have a lot of relationships. I can call you, I can say, how's this going? What's it look like? Give me your opinion. However, how would I do that research? How could I determine those types of things?
Well, I mean, you can certainly, do a lien search and see who's got what debt. Some debt isn't always, most debt's recorded, some debt isn't recorded, but the majority of it's recorded. And a lot of these deals, they're floating out there anyway. There's somebody peddling almost every deal in the city in a building that has less than 50% sales after 3 years. So a lot of that actually is out there. A lot of it's in the offering plan and in the amendments to the offering plan, particularly after they start closing, the sponsor has to file financial amendments in New York State. So there's a lot of information that's public information. But getting back to John's question, I'm not bearish on New York. I'm just being realistic. Okay. We have lost a huge amount of jobs. Retail is devastated. The restaurant industry is devastated. We have no tourism right now. We have no arts and entertainment. That's what our city is built on. So until that comes back, it's completely irrational to think that our city is going to thrive. Okay, it just is. And then Cuomo throws out some stupid concept about converting office buildings to residential, which Arnold will tell you doesn't work.
Floor plans are never, it has
Floor
never
plans,
worked.
mechanicals, I mean.
The test of time has proven that to be incorrect.
Right. So now you've got all these people thinking that all this product might come on the market in a few years because we're going to convert millions of square feet of office space to residential, which is never going to happen. You've got the perfect storm of economic factors converging at the same time. And I agree with you. The rest of the country, the housing market is doing much better. But the rest of the country has a much different housing market than New York City. You know, also in the rest of the country, the majority of the housing market isn't for rent. We're upside down. Our market is 70% rental.
I think if somebody wanted to argue with you and they said, I think you're right, we're going to feel the effect of the pandemic, but I think that you're wrong about when. Third and fourth quarter this year, we're going to start to see massive stimulus. We still see the low interest rates. We haven't experienced the inflation yet. So why so soon? Why?
I don't think that's so soon. I think that's realistic. I think that because of the pent up demand, I think also, you know, as people start coming back to the city, they're going to be reevaluating their situation. Again, most of our housing is still rental housing. So I think the rental market, agreed, it is a complete disaster right now. That has to reset, right? So a lot of people may choose to rent right now because they can get a really good deal and wait to buy, particularly at the higher end of the marketplace. There's a lot of condos out there, condo sublets, so it's, you know, good quality housing. The one thing New York City is really lacking is luxury rental housing, believe it or not, because I don't believe that there are very many true luxury rentals in Manhattan. You know, and I think that the third and fourth quarter for us in the brokerage community is going to be rough. You know, and then I think we'll see a bounce again in the first quarter of 2022. And then we have to see, hopefully the economic stimulus will come. But New York, I'm not trying to be a naysayer, but New York State's got a lot of economic issues. You know, I know Connecticut has their own as well. New York's got a budget deficit that is ridiculous, both city and state. And who do they usually turn to get out of that problem?
Stephen, Connecticut is doing just fine. Just fine. We got no problems out here. No problem.
Seriously, I mean, New York always turns to real estate. Now they're talking about the pied-à-terre tax again. I mean, why don't you just put a bullet in everyone's head? You know, it's at some point you can't get all of your income from the real estate industry. So what do? We turn away Amazon. We do stupid things. You know, we've got to be more thoughtful in our process.
But John, the driver, and it's funny when Steve talks about, look, in suburbia, it is real estate, but it is driven by New York to some degree. And we've been upside down. You know, you speak to people from Florida, Las Vegas, you know, they were selling when we were very stagnant. But if New York doesn't have leisure, you know, that's going to hurt a group of high-end buyers. On the other hand, I agree with Stephen that this is not a long-term, because my daughter just took a job and the employer said you could be in Dallas, San Francisco, 4 other places. And where did she pick? New York City. So to the next generation who's graduating this May and the May after that, there's still a certain allure to the city. And then they mature. And where do they come? Out to Fairfield and Westchester counties. So it's a process. You know, part of the reason our market was slow for 5 years was everybody held off moving to suburbia. The pandemic hit, and everybody who was with child, about to have child, thought it was time to move, came out and rented. So everybody rented last March. I'm not sure where all those renters are going to be able to rent houses this March, because a lot of inventory after a while that just sat on the market, mine included, is now gone. So I think, while Steve's suggesting a tougher time for New York, I think the difficulty is going to be for people who want to buy in suburbia, actually being able to find something to buy in suburbia.
So you've shifted as an investor. I just want to remind everybody, for a long time, you built single family homes. You've shifted to more downtown properties and multifamily lately, although you still build single family homes. And you did at the beginning of the hour say that you had bought a place in Sutton Place. So are you tempted to start looking for deals in New York, or did Stephen Kliegerman scare you off?
No, Stephen is the impetus. He started his comments by saying smart guys buy when everybody's selling, and they sell when everybody's buying. So look, I took the project. I took the project in New Canaan because I thought there was pent up demand. There were no nice rentals. There are no large condominiums for sale, no one floor living, people who want to do life easier. Yes, we're now a large enough organization that we will buy. I own 10 buildable lots in New Canaan. Okay, I own property in Greenwich. So we're still out there building, but I am a little reluctant to build spec houses because I would need the 3 pages of people who are on this call to be able to tell me what the new buyers want. That's what I can't figure out. We built move down houses on Richmond Hill. We didn't find any move down buyers. So I'm uncertain of exactly who the next realm of buyers are.
But you got to make bets, and you're making bets now for 5 years out. And what you're telling me is you're going to continue to make bets in downtown Greenwich, downtown New Canaan on multifamily, that is a long-term trend. And we're only at the beginning end of that. Yes? Yes,
unless my neighbor on Cross Street, who has a very large piece of property for sale for $40 million, if somebody comes in and buys that, I have instant competition right overnight. So
I've heard a rumor that's close to getting done. Have you heard that rumor too?
I have heard that rumor. I don't know what they're building, but I'm also looking at other markets that people that, just like Stephen's clients, I have to look for what isn't being provided. Okay, just like David Genovese did in Darien, I've done in New Canaan. So there's always a little bit of a market niche. It's just a question of how much risk you're willing to take. And years ago, I read a book about Mr. Zeckendorf, who Stephen's probably familiar with, the son, but not the dad. And Mr. Zeckendorf Sr. was either the wealthiest guy in New York or bankrupt.
Yep.
And that's the cycle. I am trying not to follow in those footsteps because bankruptcy is a difficult thing. But, when you look at what people want, it's a lot of homework that goes into that. I had a discussion with somebody yesterday about a concept that I have, and we have spent a lot of time looking at that market, but they're smarter in that market than we are. So I've asked for their help and what their opinion, because the last thing you want to do is build used to be called a see-through building. In my case, it's either unrentable or unsaleable real estate. Mm-hmm. Doesn't make my partners, the bank, or my employees happy.
No. And Arnold's right. I mean, you're in changing conditions right now. We're going to launch hopefully soon the building that we were talking about earlier on the west side, 200 Amsterdam. We have a great suite of amenities. Well, when we saw COVID hit, we actually changed some of our amenities. Now we took our conference room, our board room, and we cut it up into Zoom rooms. Okay. We retrofitted our HVAC systems with, to be able to take infrared lighting or whatever it is to kill bacteria. Made sure that they take MERV 12, MERV 13 filters. We're looking for other ways to be touchless. I think for Arnold, you're probably going to be looking at also, you know, how much bandwidth can I bring into my developments in the future? Because everyone's using more Wi-Fi, right? I don't know about you guys, but working from home in New Rochelle for the first half of the year, my internet was going down all the time because all my neighbors were using up all the bandwidth, and we were all going crazy until Verizon was able to bring a little bit more juice into the area. So what am I telling my developers now? What I want in my buildings, I want what they call black fiber. It's what goes into office buildings when they're bringing in internet service. Okay. I want that, you know, 5G network basically coming into my building so that everyone in my building doesn't have an internet problem when they're all working from home. All right. Arnold's probably going to be building more comfortable home office areas in the future, places for kids to do their homework, you know, all kinds of different things than you would have done a year ago.
You know, John, we got lucky that all of our units, rental and sale, have their own heating and cooling units. Okay, you know, everybody said, "Ooh, you really?" Remember, I planned this building long before anybody thought about COVID. And we,
Right.
you know, we got lucky on it. It is a little bit of a crystal ball and trying to figure out in communities what people want, and then you know, you go to your town fathers who say, "Well, even though we need 500 of this type of units, we're thinking that 50 is the right number." Well, that's going to change because the state and, you know, there's a different, I'm going to say, political climate ahead. You know, you mentioned early on, Scott and I are working on building affordable housing in New Canaan. It's Scott's second project for the town. It's my first. But, you know, we're going to have to be a little bit more inclusionary than we used to be because the world's changed. You know, as people look at their community, they're going to want some variation.
Yeah,
All
absolutely.
right. It's 5:07.
And you know, by the way, I'm sure that 5 years ago, Arnold wasn't thinking about putting in an electric car charging station in his apartments or houses, and now you probably are, right? There's continued innovation, you know, and it's so easy to, not easy, but it's so easy to do when you're building new construction. But once the house is built, it's a pain in the ass. You know?
Steve, you're exactly right. So we actually planned, because I had Paul and Robin, for charging. I just never realized that everybody who's looking at condos drives a Tesla. Okay, so, you know, we have 40 units. I think we'll end up putting in, you know, 28 charging stations.
Listen,
and
yeah, go ahead.
And the town fathers keep on telling me I need more parking. Okay, you know, and on the other hand, I keep on hearing about everybody who goes out, you know, when there was a place to go out, nobody drove, they all took Uber. So, you know, I don't know where the balance is, and that's the hardest thing for your clients and us to figure out, because we are betting on the future.
Yeah, exactly. And you have to think about, you know, how do you prepare that home for the future? Sometimes it's like, you know, just as easy as putting in the pipe that you can run more power later, or, you know, things later. But if you don't think about these things ahead of time, it's really hard to do later. So, you know, I think a lot of development, particularly in multifamily high rise, is about preparing well for what you don't know, right? So, you know, being able to bring power to the windows for shades, even though someone might not use them. A few years ago, people were like, "Oh, you don't do that." Now everyone asks, "Is there power at the window?" Right? You know, putting electric in the closet because they want to have their stereo system in there. And these are easy things to think about, but a lot of developers don't. And sometimes that's the difference between getting the deal and not getting the deal. You know, it seems kind of trivial, but the little details matter a lot. And the good developers try to think about as many of them as they can and try to avoid being unable to answer questions that the consumer thinks they should be able to answer.
Pre-wire for wireless.
Yeah,
No.
pre-wire for wireless.
Yes. You know, At some point, somebody's gonna rip apart some of the houses we built 10 years ago, and they're gonna say, what was this guy thinking? There's wires running here for stereo. I mean, all the things that used to be a wired service is now not wired. You know, who thought we'd be storing everything on the cloud? So, you know, part of it is also watching what Silicon Valley and the consumer electronic shows come out with, because in 6 months, we'll be asked to provide those things.
All
Not
right,
often,
one
but
more
enough.
question. We got a lot of realtors on the call, and a lot of realtors are saying, where is the realtor's place in new development going forward? We've already seen a major change in our industry where a lot of the information we provide, we used to provide, is now online. You know, they go to Street Easy, they go to Zillow, they say, okay, I can evaluate this building. I don't need a realtor. And maybe the developer says, I don't need a realtor. Now, for those of us who are in Connecticut, where every house is very different from the next house, I think the realtors might feel more confident. But when it comes to new development that you guys are both talking about, I haven't heard a lot of language in the last hour that involves the realtor. It involves the developer and his consultant, Stephen, talking about, you know, making the right choices up front. Where is the realtor's place in this dynamic over the next 5 years?
I can give you an easy answer. So of our 40 condominiums that are probably 29 different floor plans, somebody has to educate. And, you know, from the realtor standpoint, it's helping people make a decision. Their force in nature is for people who can't make a decision. You know, we had somebody who was looking at the view, wanted to buy, and by the time they got back, because they didn't listen to their realtor, the unit they wanted was gone. Now, I may be able to find them another unit that they will like as much, but just like anything else, you know, everybody who, doesn't matter what business you're in, it's that personal service and the ability to give clients the knowledge that they need. Not everybody is a knowledgeable consumer, and it doesn't matter if it's a New York building, because when you're buying, you want somebody to say to you, yes, this is a good purchase, or no, you shouldn't buy that because they only put one bathroom in the 3-bedroom unit, and that's not going to work for you. So some of it is the advice that the real estate community offers, and I'm going to say the surety that people feel about getting advice from a good real estate professional. You know, as much as we'd like to sell without it, it is still, that's where it starts.
I mean, I personally feel that we provide the overwhelming perspective. I mean, we see every single project. We know, you know, if it's not myself, it's a colleague of mine, or it's Steve or somebody who I can contact and say, look, where are the deals being made? What sort of concessions are they taking? What did they accept? What did they not accept? And you can have that perspective. And that is invaluable, because they're just piggybacking on our experience and what we see, and what, you know, and we see it all.
Yeah, I mean, we embrace the brokerage community. We want the brokerage community to be involved, to be educated, to preview the property, to, you know, to be our partner. But we also want the brokerage community to allow our on-site sales teams that know the product better than anybody to do their job and help the broker, because most of us aren't realtors in Manhattan, because we're not members of the National Association of Realty. So we want our sales teams to be able to do their job and help make the deals. And unfortunately, sometimes, and I will say this with all due respect, the brokers put their own ego ahead of their clients' needs, and they don't like the fact that our on-sites are kind of driving the deal, and then they kind of interject themselves and blow the deal up. So it's a very fine line, but the good brokers like Roberto, they know all the on-site people, they talk to them, they know how to work with them, and they work well together to close the deal. And one of my favorite stories, very quickly, was a very successful on-site broker who then became a manager years ago, was working at a building called the Lucida on 86th Street in Lexington. She had a buyer come in for a very expensive apartment with a broker. The buyer was literally placing their furniture in the apartment. And the broker said, "We got to go. We have another appointment." The broker and buyer left. The buyer came back the next day without the broker. Said that broker only wanted to sell me her listing. She had no interest in really helping me. I fired her. I'm buying this apartment.
All
So
right.
good brokers put their clients' needs ahead of their own, and they'll always come out on top. And they work really well with our on-site sales teams, who are the experts in the product, and they work with us to help them make deals and help them make commissions.
I like it.
I want to
thank
conclude
you
with
both.
one thing. I don't want
Go ahead.
anybody to misinterpret what Steve said. He said there's going to be a pullback in New York. And that means that spells opportunity.
Oh, absolutely. I'm not saying New York is dead. I think the next 6 months for us as brokers is where you're going to make your money.
No, I don't disagree. I just want to make sure for anybody who's just want to recap that.
Look, the issue in suburbia is we don't have any inventory.
Right.
Okay. I have a nephew who's looking. I have friends who are looking, and they're quite honestly, there's no inventory.
Yeah.
If you'd said that to me last year at the same week in time, I'd say inventory, you can make a deal anywhere. So it does show you how the market changes.
Let me tell you that I got a call from a Darien agent who said, I need a $3 million house and there's nothing out there for my client. So I called somebody and I said, will you sell your house? And he thought for about a nanosecond and he said, yeah, I'll sell my house. Can I have a 1-day listing? Yes, you can have a 1-day listing. That's what agents in Connecticut are going to need to do for the next 6 months. You're going to have to start thinking through your Rolodex, and you're going to have to find inventory where it does not exist.
Yeah.
Correct. And hopefully that the person who sells his $3 million home is a perfect move down candidate for the view.
And
Exactly.
your nephew should call me. I have inventory for your nephew. For you, such a deal. Such a deal. All right. Thank you, everybody. This was a really great conversation. I learned some things I did not. After all these rosy predictions, finally somebody is telling me very specifically what's happening in New York at the second half of this year. And I think that's refreshingly honest. We have got to reckon with the hit to the New York economy. So thank you, Steve.
Remember also, we're going into an election year for mayor, and that's going to be a big hit for New York as well. And unfortunately, we have a lousy one right now. Hopefully we'll get a good one for 2022. And hopefully we find someone much like a Michael Bloomberg, who's a business person that knows how to run the city like the business it is. It's not an easy task, but we need a strong mayor who really doesn't have to kowtow to any of the special interest groups and just does his job or her job. And if they do their job, we'll be in good shape by 2023.
And thank you, Arnold. At least one person in the chat room, I won't say her name, thinks you ought to be mayor, that you are just doing a fantastic job for New Canaan, and we need more Arnold Karps. So thank you for all you did.
I'd like to thank my wife for putting that in the chat room. No, look, I have very strong feelings to New Canaan. Regrettably, Mike Dinan put in that we're the largest taxpayer, so I guess I even have stronger feelings.
And you're not running for mayor.
Not now, not ever.
All right, you heard it here first.
Yes.
Everybody. All right, thank you,
Guys,
everybody.
thank you so much.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great
Steve,
weekend.
enjoy skiing, eh?
Yes.
I'm going to. Thank you.
Bring the air muffs.